Welcome to the Pharma Source podcast. Today's episode is a conversation with René Wienmann, Chief Procurement Officer at Hansen and self-confessed procurement geek. René shares some fascinating insights into how his focus on data-driven procurement and supplier indexing are successfully driving real cost savings. He lifts the lid on how these insights are being used right across the business and talks about the talent gap for the digital savvy procurement talent of the future. René, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Really nice to have you here.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
If we could start off then talking about your career to date, because you've got lots of great experience within life sciences in procurement. So you're currently CPO at Hansen, and prior to that, you were at Novozymes, where you were leading procurement excellence and digitization. And before that, companies like Novo Nordisk, Schneider Electric, and Carlsberg. So lots of really good experience to get into there. I wonder if you could give us a quick overview of some of your highlights on your journey so far, please.
Yeah, sure. I can definitely do that. As I do call myself a procurement nerd or geek, definitely because it has been, you can say, a major part of my career until now. And as you mentioned, some of the companies that I've been in has always been around the supply chain procurement world. Mm-hmm. And I think I've been in many different industries. So I kind of started in packaging industry and worked there as a buyer. Then I moved into the IT industry at IBM, where I also worked quite, I think, 6 years. Moved to Novo Nordisk. That was the first time I actually touched the pharma industry. As such, I was not that for that long. Then I moved into Schneider Electric, which was more in energy management and industrial automation. So again, a totally different type of industry. Then I moved to Carlsberg again, then another one, FMCG, brewing, beverage, and also learned a lot there. Then I moved back to, you can say, a little bit biotech, so related again to the pharma element in Novozymes. And now I'm sitting here in Hansen, also a biotech company, and been here for 2.5 years as CPO. So many different industries, and you can say high margin industries, low margin industries. So definitely a lot of differences, but of course also similarities being there. So the focus has been, you can say, more or less, of course, always concerned about delivering savings and value, but some has of course had more focus on certain elements than others. Quality as such, for example, very high on the agenda when it comes to the whole pharma and also biotech. Price has definitely been an area that was much more focused also in my Carlsberg time at a more low margin part, right? The same with Schneider Electric at that time. Packaging at that time also very quality focused. And the last couple of companies has been also very much secure supply. And of course, especially the last 3 years with all the, you can say, uncertainty and VUCA world that we're living in. So a lot of different industries with very interesting, you can say, different views also on sourcing and procurement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, would you say then that traditionally that pharma has been less focused on price than FMCG and sort of had to favor quality and other metrics instead?
I would definitely see that there's a significant difference of working in a company with, you can say, a margin of double digits, 20 plus, and then being in a low business where you sometimes are down on 2 to 3% in some of the tough years. Of course, it does a difference, and you can for sure say that price has not had the same, you can say, focus in the pharma and biotech industry, at least historically. I would say with this hyperinflation that we're seeing the last couple of years, of course, that has also been line in line with secure and supply, but it is different. I think in general also you can say the atmosphere of being in the whole life science biotech is also different when it comes to actually working together with internal stakeholders of how they perceive the procurement organization.
In what way?
I think when it comes to the life science or biotech or pharma, as we talked about, I think it's a more academic scientist environment that you are in. There's a lot of opinions, a lot of questions, and a lot of why. compared to some of the other industries that are in where it can be more, you can say, accepted that when procurement comes, that's how it is. I think we are being challenged more on the reasoning for why we're doing stuff, and also because I think it's more, you can say, different depending on in which area you are within, for example, a company within a pharma, on what actually is the important part for that specific function when it comes to sourcing. Some are looking for secure supply, some are looking for quality, some are looking for innovation, some are looking for time. As an example, I think a lot of the door opening, especially when it comes to research and development, that's not savings, for sure not. But if you can release time for a scientist or a lab assistant to do more work on what they really burn for, and that is not procuring stuff, then that is what opens doors, and not that you can do it 5% cheaper.
So a real network there of different stakeholders, decision makers. How have you found navigating that? If you're trying to change suppliers, for example, how do you take people along that journey with you in the most effective way, given how complicated it is?
Yeah, I think, again, what is really important for me, that's what I've been calling collaborative sourcing, meaning that the old ways of doing it in silos and doing it independently are in a sourcing environment that we know best doesn't work, especially not in this industry. So we need to involve people and have them actually on board, and also take them in and actually do it together with them, and not doing it by ourselves, meaning that they know what they want, they know the specs, they are in many cases the expert when it comes to the product or the service, but we are the experts when it comes to actually acquiring it and negotiating it, ensuring that we take care of risk elements and all these elements that they are not really either interested in or also don't have the capabilities to do.
Absolutely. You mentioned just now cost inflation and the VUCA world that we're in.
Yeah.
As you're thinking about going into 2024, I wonder what strategies you're putting into place to help you deal with the current economic environment.
Yeah, and that's a very good question, and I think everyone is looking for a solution and answers to that. I think what we have been doing the most is actually to try to use, you can say, the insights that is available much more than we have been doing in the past. So what I've actually did when I started also in Hansen 2.5 years ago was actually to start building a new team called Sourcing Insights, and where they're actually working with a lot of analytics and trying actually to help our category managers to you can say, use data to drive and support decision making much more than in the past. They're also helping, doing negotiation preparation packages so that the category managers can really follow what is actually happening. We have built a tool we call Price Watch, where we're actually looking into how different commodities and pricing developing over time, and also be able to forecast, but also building, you can say, different cost modeling to actually be able to follow the cost of these specific products or services. So the whole, cost breakdown analysis, should cost analysis, taking that really to the next step, and using that, and also we have indexation used in a lot of our contracts, and ensuring again that actually works as that it's supposed to be, and especially now when some of the commodities are falling again, to ensure that we actually bring down, you can say, the cost levels again. And that is definitely something that we are doing much more of. We're also using much more external data sources to support that, and building that into our cost models. That's one big element. That's the whole analytics part. Another thing that we're also trying to use is using our digital toolkit much more, meaning our e-sourcing solutions. Again, utilization. And I don't think it's only in our company, but in other companies where utilization is not as high as it could be. It's not traditionally used by everyone. So we're also pushing much more tendering and negotiation into that e-sourcing solution that we have. And an interesting maybe insights that the people maybe not be aware of, but just bringing it into these kinds of e-sourcing solutions actually deliver a higher output. simply by that you need to work a bit more structured in it. And I have a good colleague that actually did an analysis on that and actually can show that offline tendering versus online tendering, actually you get a 27% better output, which yields up to a 2% higher savings by simply running it through in a digital solution. And then if you top that with e-auctions, that again has been, you can say, existing for many, many, many years, but not necessarily are used that much by a lot of different companies. Again, we are also utilizing that much more than in the past, and can see that it also helps either bringing costs down or at least avoiding these high cost inflations that we have been seeing.
Those are really interesting metrics. 2 to 3% savings, I think you said, from e-sourcing. What do you put that down to?
You are somehow forced to do better preparation work before going into negotiations. I mean, you need to structure it. You need to look at it and analyze it more than sometimes you do, again, in a busy world where you might actually jump over a little bit and saying, I do it, based upon my experience and how I've used to do it in the old days.
Yeah.
Here you need to analyze more and prepare more for going into these you could say events compared to a traditional way of doing live.
With this tool that you've built yourself, PriceWatch, does that also inform that process?
That's the same. It's a very, very supportive tool of where they can also go in and actually see how the development is, how is the market developing, and how have our costs been developing, and actually seeing if there's a correlation there. And if there's we can see that there's not really a clear correlation, or it either goes in one or the other direction, then figure out what has happened and what can we actually do to fix it. Of course, we're not necessarily interested in beating the market, but we definitely want to follow the market. So that is also a great tool for them to actually be able to help them going into negotiations.
That's really interesting. So how are you using that outside of the procurement function? Because obviously the cost control within your team is one thing. How does that then get relayed to the business heads, commercial sales, for example? Does it help to inform their pricing?
Yeah, I would say that's also an area that has really developed, especially under the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, our cooperation with our commercial sales guys and sales excellence team, and actually helping them also explaining what is actually going on when it comes to the commodities and markets, because of course they're also getting pushed from their customers on what is happening in the energy price development, or whatever it could be, or carbohydrates, or whatever we're seeing with. So we're working much closer with our commercial sales guys to also explain the development on how we're actually seeing it and how it's developing, because again, depending on what kind of hedging strategies we have or other indexations, then we might not necessarily be hit by the market, you can say, directly. There might be a phasing off that we actually might be hit later, depending on how the market looks. For example, energy, where we are having a hedging strategy, that means that it's not necessarily hitting us the day that the market go crazy, right?
Very interesting. How are you thinking about sustainability at the moment in terms of 2024? I mean, as a business, presumably you've signed up to various sustainability targets.
Definitely. So I would say one big other area that is really, really essential for us is, of course, ESG and sustainability. And we have also signed up for scientific-based targets. So we need to deliver on scope 1, 2, and 3, and 3 that I'm responsible for, and where we need to reduce that by 20% by 2030. 20% might not seem a lot, but it is, especially also because it's an absolute number, meaning that as a growth company growing 8-9% per year, it actually will be meaning that we actually need to reduce our scope 3 by 62% if we are continue growing as we are. So it's a huge challenge. So the whole sustainability has been a really, really important part for me to set more focus on. And I think there's also some, you can say, help in working on sustainability, because in some cases we're also looking into, how can we avoid, you can say, overspecking stuff or using less of. So of course it also impacts positively on the spend agenda. But overall, what I'm trying to do is actually integrate sustainability into our procurement I hate quoting myself, but I will do so. And what my sustainability program manager always refers to is that I'm saying that sustainability needs to become part of our natural sourcing DNA. And what I mean with that is that everything we do, we need to have integrated sustainability into it. When it comes to category strategies, of course, there needs to be sustainability into it, and how we drive decarbonization as one example, but also the broader ESG agenda. In our, you can say, toolkits when it comes to e-sourcing, contracts, supplier performance evaluation, all of that has built in now sustainability into that. So it's really part of getting it into a day-to-day. I don't see sustainability as a separate function or separate discipline. It needs to be part of a category manager's day-to-day work, because that's how it's going to be in the future.
Every RFP, every tender, that would be built in.
That's where we are building in more and more into it, right? We have built different elements into our whole sustainability agenda. The first thing is our engagement model with suppliers. So again, we have segmented suppliers also depending on the analysis that we are doing, for example, for when it comes to the whole emission part. So we have actually co-developed a module where we can actually see the CO2 emission from our suppliers, from their product services. So we can do hotspot analysis and find where is it that we really need to do something different than we are today to deliver on, for example, the scope 3 reduction. So that we have developed with our IT provider, with our SpendCube, because again, if we can't measure it, then we can for sure also not manage it. So that's one element. And we also, as you said, and asked into, we are bringing it into all elements. So in tenders, supply evaluations, we're also doing, you can say shadow pricing of CO2 taxation into our TCO models. When we are selecting suppliers, we'll try to calculate in what does that actually mean when it comes to CO2 emissions. When it comes to contracts, we're also building sustainability clauses in. We are trying to find kind of bonus incentive clauses where, again, if they can come up with reduced, for example, CO2 emissions on their services or products or equipment, then there's an incentive bonus in some of our contracts. So
tying financial incentives to their carbon reduction.
To simply help us delivering on that. And that's very much on carbon emission. We're also trying to look much more into the whole ESG, you can say, area, and also trying to do supplier performance evaluation on that. And there we're also trying to be very data-driven compared to others. So we again have co-developed, might be over-exaggerating it, but we have actually been working with a small startup company that are taking another approach to the whole ESG agenda. So they're actually going out and actually finding all available data on a supplier. So they're using, I think it's now 650 different data sources, including suppliers' own homepages. And then they're web scraping that, and then they're actually dragging all that data into a platform where we can actually see a scoring of our suppliers and also different scoring cards. And then we actually have something that we can discuss and share with our suppliers. And the interesting part is that we don't need to ask for a lot of information because most of it will be available. Then we will only ask for missing information, compared to if you go into some of the other platforms where you are asking a lot of questions, which might already be available. So let's say there are ISO certifications. That's very often already on their website. So we actually just web scrape it and have it available, and we can even look it up and see if it's expired or something. So again, trying to use modern, you can say, technology, AI, to do some of the more, you can say, heavy and time-consuming activities. So we will rather use our time to talk about sustainability than collecting data.
Absolutely. And so with that, what does your current system architecture look like? Do you aim to have one single source of truth for all of your supplier data?
We are trying. I mean, we are working with different solutions that will talk to each other. I'm in general a believer of best of breed versus, you can say, one big full suite. Also because I think we need to find the solutions that that matches our capabilities and competences and where we are right now. So right now we're using different solutions depending on what we're looking into. So for example, ESG, that is one provider, a company called Responsibly, where we are doing this, you can say, gathering of all these data. Then we will later bring it in also to internal supplier performance data and actually bring that into one solution. And that we're looking at right now. But right now we're handling it in different systems.
When it comes to ESG, how do you balance that against also the pressure to reduce costs? So if you say you've got this 62% real terms target to reduce your sustainability impact by, at the same time as you're trying to reduce costs, at least you've got the data, I guess, to have those conversations.
It's a very good question. And I think that's not an easy answer. Of course, in some cases, you can buy yourself to less emission, but everything comes with a cost, or at least some of it. But it's not all of it. I mean, one good example where we are getting a win-win is that, unfortunately, we have been flying quite a lot of our products because we have a cold chain where we need to have it at minus 55 degrees. But we're actually moving that to you can say, other kind of modes, meaning that we are, for example, now using sea as a mode instead. Then we're using some super freezers where we actually have it. And of course, in that perspective, it's a huge improvement on CO2. And in this case, it's also a huge improvement cost-wise because sailing is significantly cheaper than flying it. So again, sometimes it actually works out as a win-win. There's also others where there is at least a short-term initial investment. It could be, we are, for example, buying different gases where, again, we can get green gas, which is based upon renewable energy. There's also black gas. There we need sometimes to take the hard decision saying we need to go down that line. It might have an incremental cost in the short term, but we might do that. We might also wait a bit and then activate it later, but then we know that it's ready. And in some cases, depending on product, service, or industry, some are moving faster than others. But having the whole overview of how much we can do and where we can do it. But I think I'm sometimes referring back to the whole quality management journey that I also did in my IBM time, where we actually more or less were out educating the printing industry on if you can reduce waste, you can say help out improving your own earnings and margin, and we can also get a better product, better quality, but also at a cheaper price. And I think, again, looking into the ESG and especially on scope 3, it's the same. We also, as I said, using shadow pricing for CO2 taxation and saying that we add a number of euros per ton of CO2 and use that when we actually do our supplier selection.
That's a good way to communicate it, isn't it?
Yeah, and it helps drive the right discussions also going forward, right? And saying, again, also to suppliers, it will actually help you if you actually improve here. But I think one element for us is that it's the dialogue that is important. We are not coming and threatening and you can say putting targets as such. We would rather have the dialogue with them and actually feel if they are actually on the same journey of us, and then that will also lead to finding the right strategic partners in some of these areas where we really need a partnership to be able to succeed.
Collaborative sourcing.
Yeah, exactly.
When you describe your approach, René, a lot of what you talk about is using technology as an enabler.
Yeah.
More so, actually, than many other people I speak to across procurement. I wonder what your thoughts are on how procurement can get better with technology. When you walk into a new team, a new function, I mean, how do you try to understand their level of digital maturity, how well they're using the tools available? How do you tend to tackle that?
Yeah, that's also an interesting area. I think, as you're right, I mean, I am trying to utilize technology as much as I can, because I think overall the complexity of working with procurement is not getting less, it's getting more. You can say the whole VUCA world, uncertainty, but also you can say the ESG agenda and regulatory requirements that are coming in. And I don't think we will be able to hire in more resources to be able to tackle that. So we need to be smart. And one way of doing it is, of course, also automating, digitalizing, and using, you can say, technology to help us, so we can focus in on the more value creating activities. And I think that's one of the challenges, of course, is also to get people on that journey with us. And I think also if you look back, and I've also seen that there's a lot of, you can say, a lot of systems out there that are underutilized, where they don't really use them as they're supposed to. So that's another element that we're looking into. How can we ensure that we actually get the right return on investment on the investment that we do in technology? And that we are definitely also trying to help on that. And I think there's several reasons. I mean, past poor user experience on UXs, on difficult to use system, not intuitive. And of course, we're trying to change them to more intuitive, easygoing solutions, which is also being developed, but it's also due to lack of digital capabilities and competences. And thirdly, probably also a little bit back to the whole chicken and the egg, too busy to use them because I'm too busy, and there's a learning curve sometimes, even though it's intuitive to use. So what we're really looking into is trying to see what can we actually do to ensure that we actually use the system that we select. So we are doing a lot of training, but we are doing it again, what I normally describe as a sprint, meaning that we do training, but we would like to combine it so that it becomes a day-to-day, you can say, more or less during the training or the day after, meaning that you need to get experience in it and you need to embrace it and not, go back and then suddenly you need to use it a month later, then it's gone. So we have been trying and looking into how can we actually get, one example is our spend cube was also not utilized enough. So we were also looking at how are we on payment terms on the whole thing. So we were also looking into running, you could say, projects. Should we run a cash raise and what can we actually do of improvements? Then we are doing that while we are actually learning, you can say, to use the system at the same time. And that seems to help because then it actually becomes part of the day-to-day work of using the systems.
Is it important that everyone's doing it at the same time in the same room, for example?
Yeah, so I think we are trying to gather people and say, okay, let's work on it now. And that might be half a day or a day of, you can say, workshop where you actually get your hands dirty and actually start working on it. The same with responsibly, we talked about our ESG module where we are also reaching out to suppliers. Then we'll do it, sitting together, having a bit of fun, and then actually do it and kicking it off. And then afterwards, they go home and continue with it. And that seems to work better than having training that I might need, the system, and I might need it in a month or two. The same with e-auctions when we needed to restart that again, find an e-auction candidate, and then we'll do that one. And we'll have some learning in it. It might not be the perfect one, but we need to have you out there trying it out so that you actually get it into your toolkit.
And by doing that, are you able to then see the usage level of tools?
Yeah, so we have an internal leading indicator saying that we can see that, you can say, utilization of the different toolkits, if it comes to SpendCube or e-sourcing or e-auctions, are actually increasing. More people are using it, and they're also logging in more often. So we can see that it is actually becoming more and more of an actual tool that they're actually using on a daily or weekly basis.
How are you finding the market at the moment in terms of talent? Do you find it's easy to find people who can move into these kind of roles, embrace this type of culture?
That's probably my challenge number 3. That's the whole, you can say, war for talent, I think some are calling it. And I think in general, we have 2 problems there, or at least I see it. I think in general, there's a lack of resource. So I think that's the first part, right? That they're not available. And secondly, then we have the lack of competence and capabilities, and that only makes it worse. And I think I just a couple of days ago read a Gartner survey saying that only 14% of procurement leaders mean that they have, you can say, the right talent to meet future needs in their function.
Wow, that's quite damning, isn't it?
That's scary. But then the other question was also, so how is it if you look at your current performance requirements? And then it was actually still only 45 or 46% that they had the talent that they needed just to deliver today's, you can say, requirements to the function. So I think in general, we have an issue of having the right number of resources, but also the capabilities. And I think that's again where we really need to embrace the whole, you can say, professional function of procurement. I think it's a cool place to be. I think we need to be able to, you can say, market it much better internally and also externally. And I think it's an area where we could do more. And when it comes to the actually needs, I think that's also where we can see that the category manager profession becomes much more interesting. It becomes much more strategic. They need to do much more long-term thinking. They need to embrace, agility, being able to adapt to rapid changes in condition and environments we are in, much more in the past. They need to be able to work with risk management. We have also done that in the past, but now it's much more important, right, when it comes to geopolitical, you can say, changes, environmental, market volatility. You can say we had Corona, we have different wars, trade wars, and even worse, you can say other kind of wars that we are seeing popping up here and there. So I think that's another thing where we need to be even more strategic, even more risk management minded, and learn more on that. And on top of that, then there comes the whole new thing that is also extremely, I think, motivating, especially for the young people coming in, sustainability, which is a huge area where you as a procurement professional can actually influence a lot. If you look at how much we are sitting of spend, where we can actually influence how that is actually being, you could say, purchased and produced. So the whole thing of learning also how to integrate this sustainability into your sourcing strategies and evaluate suppliers. I think that's a very interesting area for young people also to get in there. Another thing that we need to have, that's the whole, you can say, digital proficiency of being able to analyze and interpret data to drive better sourcing decisions. I think that's also, especially also a requirement for young people that the toolkit needs to be there, right? They expect that they can come in and actually use some of these new, you can say, technologies that are available.
Yeah.
And then the last part, maybe also when it comes to future needs or capabilities, that's the whole regulatory compliance. So again, I mean, right now we are seeing them coming in from left to right, on the different global compliance standards, labor laws, environmental regulations, anti-corruption, all these ethical also sourcing elements is also key to be able to master.
Yeah. And procurement sits right at the heart of all of those big strategic decisions. It's an incredibly dynamic place to be, but I guess it's a case of telling that story, isn't it? And marketing the function.
Exactly. And I think, I mean, that is for me, I'm always saying that you don't find one functional area that has as broad a reach as a procurement organization. We talk with everyone, right? Because everyone is our, you can say, stakeholders or users. So I mean, one day you are sitting discussing, company cars, if you are within indirect, the other day you are discussing consultancy or HR services or whatever, or maintenance. I think it's really cool if you are interested in learning a lot of different things also, and having this, you can say, very, very broad collaboration, both internally, but of course then also externally to the supplier market.
Absolutely. Within life sciences, you then also get involved with discussions from flow chemistry to large molecule formulations. It's a whole nother level.
Exactly. And I think the whole life science, I mean, again, when it comes to the whole being, you can say, also purpose driven, and that's again also not only the young people, but a lot of us are looking for that. So again, the whole purpose of if it's in our case, it's let's grow a better world naturally. I mean, working with biological solutions and trying to actually deliver solutions that can help a lot of industries of using less, for example, food, and have less food waste or whatever it would be. But you can say, I think that's also within the life science. I mean, also helping patients, and there's a lot of good purpose compared to, I think honestly other industries that is also very appealing.
Yep, absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking, and happy to talk much more about these elements with the audience.
Thanks so much to René for a fascinating interview. For more insights into procurement strategies in life sciences, make sure to sign up at pharmasource.global for your regular dose of insights. Thank you for listening.